sports fans, Larry Eder, RunBlogRun. It's Socialing the Distance, your favorite program. Today we're featuring a real treat. It's Harry Marra. He has been a track coach for 60 years at the high school, college, and elite club level. And he has done some things that no other human has done. One, he coached the men and women's champions at the indoor multi-events at a world championship. No one's ever done that. He coached Theisen-Eaton to gold in 2012 and 2016. No coach has ever coached a decathlete, a multi-eventer, to defend a gold medal. And he is a wealth of information. Harry, good to see you.
Hey, Larry, good to see you, and thanks for having me on.
No problem. The first time I met you was you were coaching at SF State. You had brought Johnny Mathis in to do the Johnny Mathis invite. I think he sang the national anthem in '84. It was Tim Gruber was in the steeple, took second to some Aussies. I was in the 10, took about seventh, and we would come back, and you were building that meet up. And, I recall back in 1976 going to a meet at SF State. I was to run my first steeple, and I went to warm up going over the barrier, and it rotted through, and we had to cancel the steeple. So that gave you an idea of that program back then, and you really built it up. What was the secret to having success at SF State?
We had nowhere to go but up. When I interviewed for the job, I was told they hadn't won a conference track meet in 5 years. I figured, okay, you got nowhere to go but up. Secondly, during the interview, I asked, how much does it cost to go to school here? And they said $250. I said, $250 a unit? They said, no, for the whole year.
Wow.
I said, holy cow. I said,
wow.
There were 30,000 students there. And I said, this has got so much untapped potential. The first year we were terrible. We didn't score but 2 or 3 points in the conference. Mm-hmm. But then I began Johnny Mathis was a huge help, first of all. Mm-hmm. He injected a fair amount of money each year that gave us the opportunity to travel to bigger meets like the Florida Relays, the Penn Relays, and whatever. And that helped our recruiting quite a bit. In my recruiting, I was recruiting all over, but then about the second or third year, I started focusing on San Francisco City schools, Bay Area schools, and the junior colleges.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, Larry, these kids, and I call San Francisco State the blue collar school. Yeah. They worked, every one of them worked, every one of them went to school, every one of them had a social life, and everyone tried to be an athlete. That's a big load.
Yeah.
Hard-nosed kids. We got beat periodically, but we never beat ourselves. That's how tough they were.
Wow.
So that was showing enthusiasm on my part, and then the toughness of the kids was really good.
The next time I really got to spend time with you and appreciate your talents was in 1990 with the Visa Decathlon program, which I still think was one of the finest programs in the history of our sport. I believe it went 6 to 8 years.
10 years.
10 years. But during that time, you developed Dan O'Brien, Dave Johnson. There was a myriad.
Huffins.
Huffins. I mean, it went, and you brought back the tradition and history of the decathlon. And I got to meet Bob Mathias, Milt Campbell, Bruce Jenner, Bill Toomey, who's such a character, and every one of them. I mean, I've got interviews for the last 30 years, Harry, and I just pulled out a Milt and a Bob Mathias that I'm going to digitize that are amazing. And what you were able to do, I thought, was you and Fred Samara from Princeton, you brought these guys, these historical people from our sport, and you taught Dan and Dave and Chris and the whole Visa Top 10 and that group pride in the event again and about the history of the event. Tell us about that program.
That was, you hit it on the nose. When I went to Visa after the second meeting, which was 2 weeks after the first meeting, they said, Harry, we're going to help you. We don't know how, we don't know how much, we don't know when. Just keep coming back to us with ideas that you think the athletes need to improve and the coaches need to improve. So then we came to an agreement as to how we were going to go about it. And Visa said, oh, by the way, here's one of the caveats. We want every living gold medalist, Jenner, Toomey, Matthias, Campbell, and Rafer. We want them involved in the program on a full-time basis.
Wow.
Their financial arrangement would be above and beyond what our budget was. And we want them at every training camp. So as good, Larry, as every one of our training camps were and these programs were, and we brought in Al Order, we brought in Tom Telez, we brought in specialists to work with the kids in addition to the regular decathlon coaches that we had. And one of the best things was that every one of those living gold medalists was there. And I can remember distinctly, Dan O'Brien, as a young kid, that second year maybe he was involved, said, you know what? These guys are no different than anybody else. I can be that guy. I can be Milt Campbell. I can win the gold medal. So it was like magic. And the gold medalists at first were a little bit skittish, thinking, these guys aren't going to listen to me because my techniques were antiquated, way back when. But I said, Toomey, get down on the starting blocks. And he got down on it. The guy ran 45.6. Yeah. And he got down on the starting blocks. You could hear the pin drop when he talked about this is what I did and so on. It was just a fantastic program. And just to let people out there know, Visa took care of us financially, but in Visa's term, John Bennett, the godfather of the decathlon from Visa, always said, Harry, I used to always thank him. And he'd say, Harry, it was a rounding error. That's how little we spent on our end, but you got plenty in order to do what you needed to do. It was fantastic. I remember him saying, because all of a sudden I get this phone call from Visa and we're starving, with my little magazine. And I get a call from Visa and they go, what's your most expensive ad? And I go, $4,000. We'll buy it for 4 years. And I said, wow. I said, okay. And that was my biggest ad thing, Harry. It was $64,000. I didn't have any. And good for you. I didn't know that. Yeah. They came in and they helped us. And, the going to the events was amazing for us to see. Adam still remembers going to the USA German meet down in San Luis, right. We had a blast there. And, you guys educated the media about it. Milt would sit down and talk with me. Bob Matthias was amazing. And Rafer just had this wonderful way when I would ask him questions about answering things. But I reuse a column from Bill Toomey all the time. He called it his bag of tricks. Yep. He told me about having his bag, an extra pair of spikes, extra towel, dry clothes, Pedialyte, because he was the first one to tell us about Pedialyte, right? And it was just simple things like, Larry, when the kids are done, when you're done worked out, you get a dry T-shirt. I said, why? He says, because you can get sick. When you're that fit, that's when you get screwed up. And then he told me about practicing the high jump in the rain in Santa Barbara because he hated doing that. And that's what happened in Mexico. Poured rain in Mexico City. Yeah. And then the other one was, I remember him talking to the guys about being able to jump on someone else's poles. And then we're like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, in Mexico, they broke my poles. I think he borrowed a German's pole. I can't remember that whole story, but I know. Not to cause an international thing, but the Germans hit his poles on him. And he got they were back on the warm-up track. He got to the pole vault and there were no poles around. He had to run to the warm-up track, run back. And as soon as he got back, the official said, warm-ups are over. And he went, holy cow. Wow. Wow. He missed twice at his opening height, but made it on his third and then went on and tied his PR. So that won the games for him. So you've worked at what I was trying to show is, you've built up programs, you've worked at the elite level, and then you went up to Oregon. And I believe did Vin bring you in to start working with Ashton? Is that how it called me in September of late September. Dan Steele decided around the first day of school, which is late September in Oregon, to take the Northern Iowa job. Okay. And Vin called and said, hey, Dan left. this kid Ashton Eaton here and Brianne Theisen-Eaton, and I didn't know Brianne too much, but I knew about Ashton, and said, we need a coach. Can you give me some recommendations? So I said, get somebody good, because this kid could be pretty good. So a month later, I figured he hired. I hadn't heard back from him. So very early, late October, very early November, I get a text, and I call Vin. He says, can we talk? I said, yeah, sure. What's up? And he goes, I want you to take the job. I said, oh my goodness, moved from San Luis Obispo up to Eugene. I said, when would you want me to start, Vin? He goes, tomorrow. Vin.
Yeah.
I packed my Miata, I took the top down, stuffed all my clothes in, and off I went to Eugene, November 3rd.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Ashton 2011 in Daegu, and
Right.
He took the silver there to Trey, and he was a little frustrated because he knew he had made some mistakes that he could have won. By 2012, you had him in a place where he wasn't going to make those mistakes.
Let me expand upon that, because this might
Sure.
be good for coaches that are listening.
Please.
You're exactly right. Ashton, I never saw this happen to him up until that point. He fought himself for the first eight or nine events. And then finally I said, you're still in this thing if you beat Lionel by 5 seconds in the 1500. And it was hot and muggy and and all that stuff. And then he really warmed up and competed well and ended up with the silver. As soon as that meet was over, we met 2 days later. We were together, but then 2 days later at the airport, he was flying on United and I was on Lufthansa, still going to the same place, but different planes. And we had a coffee and he said, Coach, that will never happen again. I fought myself. I thought I had to perform at world record level in order to win one of these things. And all I have to do is to be steady. That will never happen again. From that moment, Larry, that's the lesson to be learned in the World Championships. From that moment, Ashton Eaton, from 2011 right through his retirement in 2016, never lost another decathlon.
Wow.
Brianne Theisen-Eaton, another story for young coaches, came to me right after London. Young kid, makes the Olympic team out of college. I thought that's pretty good. Finishes 10th in London. I thought that's pretty good. She was ticked off. She came to me in mid-September. We took a break, into the office and said, Coach, I'm not doing this anymore to get 10th place. We're going to have to make changes. And I want to be on the podium. And so we sat down and talked. She didn't try from that point on. She committed from that point on.
Yeah.
And Larry, here's the other thing. From that point, from that moment in September of 2012, all the way through to the end of Rio, Brianne Theisen in every major international competition in heptathlon or pentathlon indoors never was off the podium. That's unheard of in multi-events. That's unheard of.
Yeah.
So those two lessons the kids learned, they learned the hard way, but they took that lesson and went forward with it. I called Roz Eaton just as soon as I landed, Ash's mom, and said, Roz, he got second, but this is the best thing in the world. Learn the lesson here in Daegu so you don't learn it in the Olympic Games. He went to London, took the lead in 100 meters, and never gave it up.
I just remember in 2014, I was all over Europe and I was watching, Ashton was just doing the 400 hurdles that year. And we got a few times to talk, and he PB'd in Glasgow, and he was totally into it.
48-59.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, and you know, it was a great race. He was on, his hurdling was on, but he was aggressive. And I talked to him afterwards. I said, what are you learning? And he goes, everything. He goes, I needed to do this to focus. And to me, it was more about, you encourage him to get to the next mental level, because in 2012, everybody knew he was good and he broke the world record and the trials, and London was phenomenal. 2016, you had kept his body together for a long time. And and it was just a challenge. I remember talking to Milt about 56 or 52 and 56, and Matthias about 48 and 52. And every time and Rafer Johnson about 2, every time I talked to one of the guys about that second time in the driver's seat, there were always interesting challenges. And
It was tougher.
yeah, how did you prepare Ashton mentally for 16?
Well, the start of the mental aspect was the time off in 2014. Remember, Oregon is a fantastic program, the University of Oregon, but it's a very intense program. So now he and Bree are there for 4 years, pretty intense, okay? He ends in 2010. Then you go into Daegu in 11, the games in 12, that's intense. And then you turn around and come back to Moscow in 13. That's intense. And one day we were on the warm-up track, the practice track in Santa Barbara in 13. And his practice that day wasn't going so great. And I said, you know what? You're exhausted, Ashton. I'm exhausted. I don't want to do with decathlon. I don't want you to do with decathlon next year. I don't know exactly what we'll do, but we'll do something different. And then the 400-meter hurdles came to the forefront. Yeah. As an event to do. And it gave him a mental break and a physical break from the rigors of training in the decathlon. Yeah, yeah. That's what really led to the preparation. And he said, I need this year so that in 14 I can have a fun year. Then 15, 16 I can refocus for. And he thought maybe he would go to 17 if he wanted to. So he needed that time. So it was as much his suggestion as it was mine. In retrospect, so you're in a room now with a group of high school coaches, okay? And they're enthusiastic as heck. They don't know much about their events, but they're enthusiastic. Give me the two biggest mistakes that high school coaches make when they start coaching track and field. There's a number of things that every coach, young coach, mistakes make and so on. But just to point out a couple is this. Number one, every coach, high school, junior high school, college, post-college, whatever, needs to be at practice at least 1 hour before the start of practice. Don't show up 3 minutes before. Yeah. Prepare your lesson plans the night before based on any number of parameters. What you saw in practice or what your training scheme is going to be for the next few weeks, whatever. That's understandable. Then when you get there 1 hour before, and let's say in the multi-events, you're going to shot put, high jump, and then run 400-meter training or something like that. So now you're there an hour before and you're cleaning out the shot put circle. You're reviewing as a coach what your lesson plan was. You know, Ashton has this problem in the middle. He's not getting his foot down correctly. He doesn't understand it. How am I going to say that better? How am I going to present that to him? Or Brianne has this or something like that. Then you move over and you start to set up the hurdles, let's say, and you say, you know, they're lazy with their lead leg. They're not getting it down. What can I say different today? So you're preparing. And that way, when they come to practice, you're set. You've reviewed your cues just like an athlete should and go from there. The other mistake, and this is a critical thing, and I see this quite often. Practice starts, for all the coaches out there, practice starts the very second the athlete takes the first step in warm-ups. Watch warm-ups critically. Don't be off on your cell phone recruiting somebody or paying your bills or something like that. Watch warm-ups critically. You mentioned earlier Ashton and Bree were healthy for 7 years as the captain. That's unheard of. Yeah. And I watched if I was talking to somebody and warm-up started, I just pushed them aside and I focused on that. Yeah. Every coach can see they're favoring their back or something, and an athlete is not always going to tell you what's going on because they want to try to make you feel good and do well for you that day. And I'd say, hey, Bree, what's up with your neck? Coach, I slept really weird last night. It's all creaked. I said, well, we're not going to high jump today. We're going to do something else. Yeah. So watch warm-ups critically and then adjust accordingly. And the final thing is that when you go to practice with a plan, everybody should have a plan, and most coaches do. Yeah. But understand this, coaching really should be spelled adaptation. It's adjusting every day. I had the best workouts in the world. Brian Brophy, when I coached him, and I had a bet, I was going over my little sheet of paper about saying, bro, today we're doing this, 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 and this. And he'd be smiling. I said, what are you smiling about? He said, you're never going to follow that. My back's going to be sore. My hamstring's going to be tight. Yeah. And he said, I'll bet you $1 a day you can't follow that list. Brophy won every time.
Yeah.
So you have to find adjustments and stuff like that and be confident that the adjustments you're making are still going to be beneficial.
I remember in 2011, we came up and hung out for a couple of days at Oregon, and I was asking you what your job really was, and you said, well, you said that Ashton has 10 chances to get hurt, and your job was to make sure he didn't get hurt in any of those damn events. And
you know what we did, Larry, on that? And I think this is good advice for young coaches also. Never, ever, ever in any major championship where Brianne and Ashton or Paul Tarek or Sheldon Blockberger or Brian Brophy or Paul Foxton or any of the top dogs that we had, never were they in 100% physical fitness shape. Maybe they were in 90% shape. We didn't push the envelope, but we pushed the envelope in being 100% healthy. You need to teach all athletes how to compete. So get them 90% in shape, 100% healthy, and turn them loose on Saturday. And that's what we did for those 7 years with those two kids.
Okay, we're going to stir it up now because you and I love doing that. About a week ago, we were chatting, and it was about all these fast times, and we didn't even get into the shoes and stuff because I'm going to stay out of that stuff right now. But you were saying that you were concerned about these athletes running well. You said they were taking a lot of the energy that they had for 2020 and using it now, and you didn't know if they could be ready for the Olympics or would they be ready next year? And I said, what do you mean by that? And you go, Larry, look, when I had Ashton and Brianne, we trained our butts off in 2015. 2016, it was about staying healthy, sharpening, and competing.
Absolutely.
When you see these athletes now, so let's 2019, Doha was late, and I was totally freaking out going, okay, look, athletes going to have to recover. They're going to shorten their recovery so they can be ready for Tokyo. There's going to be a lot of the people in 2019 that don't do well in 2020, and a lot of people did bad in 2019 will do well in 20, and then the pandemic comes. Looking at if you were armchair quarterbacking it, how do you think the athletes that are doing well now will do if we have an Olympics in 2021?
I think they'll do well. I think they'll learn some things from what is happening this year. Okay. I can tell you point specific. It was August of 1970. I was standing on the track at UC Santa Barbara, warming up with Bill Toomey. He was still kind of staying in shape. He was retired, but he and Barry King and I were doing striders on the infield, and that was the way he warmed up. So he said, Harry, my secret was I never trained in 1968. I trained my tail off in 67. And in 68, after my break, took a month and got in shape, general shape. Then everything was sharp and quick. And I was in and out of practice in an hour. Stay healthy and just get sharp. Wow. And I use that every year, every Olympic year. Mm-hmm. So in the year before the games, in 2011 before London, in 2015 before Rio in 16, we trained our butt off. And then two things. And then we got in shape the next year, the Olympic year, the fall, say, of 2015, and then started competing all through indoors and all through outdoors and just stayed sharp. It's critical. It's really important. And another component of that is that athletes really need to use competition to sharpen themselves. You'll train and fix something in practice, but you'll only time it up and make the rhythm great in competitions. So to compete quite often is not so much a problem if, in fact, you're healthy.
Well, that's a question I wanted to ask you. So I went back and looked at my training logs, and I was running middle distances, and I would race 35 times a year. And now these guys race, not a non-pandemic year. They're lucky if they race 8 or 10. And I look at these guys sometimes and I go, there's certain people who race a lot. you look at throwers. Ryan Krauser likes to compete a lot of times because it helps him figure his things out. And you're completely correct, I believe, in that there's a different paradigm when you're competing as opposed to even a high-end workout. With Ashton, what would you do? Would you have him like one weekend do the hurdles and the shot, and maybe the next weekend do a pole vault? Or
yeah, we would pick certain events, and whatever we were targeting, let's say there was an issue in the long jump. Early on, there was with Brianne. She was jumping 20 feet 6, which was okay, but it wasn't going to cut it. So we changed a lot of things around. So we long jumped as often as possible. And we always hurdled, and somewhere they always tried to run 400 meters. One of our keys, I think, Larry, one of the keys to success that I had as a coach, not just with Ashton and Bree, but with all the multi-eventers, we trained from approximately November 1st. We took October to get in shape. November 1st to April 1st, we trained real hard as quarter milers. We did all the skills, we did all the events, but the females and the males trained as quarter milers. Wow. Brianne ended up running as a heptathlete 50.9 leadoff leg for Canada on the 4x4 when they got the silver or bronze. I can't remember, at the Pan Am Games in Toronto in 15, I guess it was. And Ash obviously ran 45 flat. Come April 1st, and this is something I think young coaches should know, maybe come May 1st in high school. Come April 1st, we stopped training. We did not train from that moment on. We took whatever we put in the bank between November and April, which was quite a bit. We trained hard. And then we typically went to Santa Barbara at that time. The weather was warmer and sunny and all that.
Sure.
And we sharpened everything. So we trained, we ran, instead of 3 times 300s, maybe we ran a 300 and a 200. We took full recovery and we moved those sons of guns. We really moved them. So that's sharpening everything up. And then inevitably, come June, you were ready for nationals. And then come July or August, you were so fresh and so sharp, they were always ready for the World Championships and Olympic Games. And that's how we did it. Yeah. That's how we did it. Stop training early, stay healthy, and just sharpen. You're only going to improve your strength and your physiological wherewithal and only so far in any one given year. Don't try to push it right till a week before the meet and then back off. It's too close. It's too close.
What do you think about these training groups that we have around the U.S.? And there, you got Lance Brauman with his sprinters and jumpers down in Florida, Raina Ryder. You've got Pete Julian with his group, Jerry Schumacher. Is training as a group really key to success for these young athletes?
I don't know if it's the only key, but it sure as heck is. I don't know if everybody knows the story, but I was one of the lucky ones. Bill Toomey brought 17 decathletes.
Wow.
And from 13 different countries into Santa Barbara in 1971, in the fall of 71. 17 athletes from 13 different countries, and we were all there training in preparation for the Munich Games. Wow. And out of that, every day you showed up at practice, Larry, one decathlete was a good shot putter, somebody was a good high jumper, somebody was a pole vaulter, somebody was a sprinter. You learned. It was like you were like a sponge. So training in groups is good. And then when you talk about the different coaches that you just mentioned, those guys are good coaches. So they know when to push and when to back off. So motivation with your buddy next to you or, friend next to you is a good thing. It's a good thing.
In the UK, we've seen Katarina Johnson-Thompson. There's been a nice tradition in the women's multi-events. Why do you think they're successful over there?
I know Tony Minichiello really well, and he's a great coach, and he does a great job he did a great job, obviously, with Jessica. Nobody in the world I've ever seen under more pressure than Jessica Ennis going into London and in the backyard, and did a great job. They have a history going back to Mary Rand in Tokyo, who was the silver medal winner in the pentathlon back then. She broke the world record, won gold in the long jump. So Mary Rand, and then you take Mary Peters after that, and then the tradition continued. All right. And so I think any tradition, And that's what Visa did with the decathlon. It brought that tradition back again. And that's why they're having success over there in the multi events. And Katerina is the latest. Unfortunately, I heard she just has a little bit of an Achilles problem going on, but hopefully it'll heal up in time for Tokyo.
I was disappointed when the Visa program ended. And I think that the repercussions, it was heartbreaking to me because I thought it had shown us that if we focus on an event and we build it out, and I think all the other events have learned from that. And I think what you guys did is put into place things so that sprinters, jumpers, these other groups have done really well. Right now we've got about 22,000 high school track programs. We've got about 2,500 college programs, about 1.5 million 14 to 22-year-olds doing track and field. We've got the best farm team in the world,
Right.
If you were talking to a group of coaches right now, how do you talk about coaching during the pandemic?
Well, obviously you have to be careful and abide by the safety precautions with the social distancing and the masking and what have you.
Yeah.
But here's the other deal. And this came up immediately, probably last March when everything started to really shut down, pretty quickly.
Sure.
And Frank Zarnowski asked me, would you write something for the coaches? And if it was me, and now it's starting to open up again, but back in March of last year, if I was still coaching on a day-to-day basis, I would take every athlete I was working with. I don't care whether they're beginning athletes or elite athlete. Every athlete has an Achilles heel in any one particular event. I would isolate that Achilles heel, find out what that is, sit with the athlete and have a meeting and saying, this is the problem. This is your problem in this event. Then I would design a program. He would have to work by himself, but maybe somebody can video him, where that kid is working just on that particular problem. If he fixes that problem over 6 or 7 weeks, don't worry about the whole high jump. Just get the fourth cross steps where you're staying square and crossing over, or whatever the problem is, straightened out and squared away. The end result will show that the whole high jump will be better in the long run. So that's how I would attack it. I would say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say this is going to be a wash of a year. Pick one of the problem areas. Maybe it's your flexibility. All right. Maybe it's your lack of mental toughness. I don't know. Maybe it's maybe you're a little timid, really putting your foot down in the long jump. Teach them how to stay perpendicular as they run over the penultimate. So it makes it that much easier. But that's what I would have done. I would tell any high school coach to do that. Another thing that's important is coaches would say, Coach, we're not getting enough repetitions in. I got to Oregon November 3rd, 2009. I didn't know Ashton and Bree that well. We got to know each other after a month or 2 or 3. And about just before Christmas, so what was I there? 6 weeks. Ashton came to my office before practice one day. And when somebody comes in your office and has something on their mind, they want to talk. Yeah. And he opened the door, and I was sitting at my desk, and he looked at me and he said, Coach? I looked up and said, yeah. He goes, less is more. And that's all he said. And I thought about it for a second, and I looked up, I said, okay. He was saying that the type of coaching I was doing, the volume was more than what his body was used to. Okay. He needed less and could rise to the top. I trusted what he said. I began to cut him back probably by 30% in volume. 2 months later at the NCAAs, world indoor record. So you have to listen to the athlete. The younger the athlete is, you listen to them, but younger, they don't have all the experience. But you still have to listen to the athlete and try to adjust your program and adapt how you're saying something to them so it crosses over.
So, Harry, I went onto your website. It's sponsored by Dogo Athletic, and we'll put this up underneath the interview, but it's DOGO athleticadvisors.com.
/Harry Marra.
/Harry Marra. And we'll have that all up. So you do you will help with athletes and you will help with coaches, and help them get better. Is that correct?
That's correct. I knew, and I actually announced before the Olympic Games in Rio, that was it for me. I wasn't going to do another Olympic Games. I would have coached Ash and Bree in 17 if they decided to continue, but that wasn't, we didn't even discuss that till, that wasn't an item until after the games were over. We were that focused. So after Rio, I said to myself, I don't want to coach day to day anymore. But I do have so much information and knowledge. I want to help coaches. So since then, I've been trying to put this thing together. And it turned out to be it's a virtual thing, but also can be in person also, once COVID starts to slow down and what have you. But, and COVID didn't bear this thing from a standpoint of a virtual. It was my thought originally. I just didn't have the wherewithal to put it together. Now, here's the best part of what Dogo does. Okay. If someone sends me a short video clip, just even off their iPhone, it doesn't have to be anything that you're going to digitize, or that's taking it a little too far. A short video clip of Mary or Joey or whoever running down the long jump runway and taking off. Yeah. We know 90% of the long jump is the approach and takeoff, 95%. What happens in the air is the end result of what you did on the runway. I can take a look at that video, and most coaches can do the same and say, this is where your problem is. This is where your error is. You're blocking off. You're not running through the board or something. Yeah. But what the critical thing is, coaches have to develop this skill, and I learned this from Tom Tellez. He was my mentor, is that you have to dial that tape backwards, find out where the problem that is occurring broke down. Why is this problem here at the board or in a penultimate occurring? Dial it back and fix this. In Brianne's case, once she figured out of staying perpendicular in the long jump, 5 steps out, and not giving into that anxiety of backing off and loading up and feeling strong and powerful, staying perpendicular and trusting it, her long jump went from 20 feet 6 to almost 22 feet. All right. So that's what Dogo can do. The expertise that I have, I can look at that. I took an athlete who was a gymnast, and they run with these arms way down at the side and long. Well, that's a little bit of a problem, obviously. But the good point was the articulation of those arms were through the shoulders. I changed off of the video her arm action. I showed her what her correct arm action would be. I gave her a couple of baseballs and said, stand in front of a mirror and do these drills over and over and over again. She came to the next practice video in it. She looked like Usain Bolt. She was Showtime. Yeah. So it's just a service that can really help a young coach learn the correct way. And one thing that I always do, even with athletes, you explain something to an athlete, you have to develop a trust with the athlete. The athlete has to trust you. You as a coach have to trust the athlete. So in developing that trust, I try to back up everything I tell an athlete to do with you don't have to be a PhD, some simple scientific principle as to why you do this. The pole vault pole, the tip of the pole vault pole way up in the air, doesn't have to be rotated to the middle of the runway and then put in the box. You can leave it over to the left side and just plant. Why? Rotation always occurs around the CG, and it's going to go right to the middle. If you don't have to bring it over, you maintain good sprint posture. If you maintain good sprint posture, your speed of takeoff is better. Speed of release is critical to distance attained. There's your science right there. As simple as that. The faster the shot put leaves my hand, the farther it's going to go, all things being equal, right? So it's simple things like that, and this can be a great service to young coaches. Instead of sitting in a classroom listening to an expert, and we have a lot of experts, but instead of sitting here and listening, you get a better feel of how to make the adjustment. The other aspect of Dogo, Gold Medal Motion is what the name of my company is learn by watching. So I've changed. When people ask me to do clinics, I'll say, yeah, I'll come and do it. But it's got to be learned by watching. So if I'm teaching the long jump, for example, I'll get two athletes. All the coaches will stand around. They'll have their notepads and video cameras if they want. And I'll coach these two athletes, for an hour, 45 minutes or an hour. And the coaches are observing and watching. Then after that session, I sit with the coaches, and the coach will say, Harry, Mary was doing this, this, and this, and you made this, this, and this suggestion. Why did you do that? What was the deal there? And that's the way people learn. And in hindsight, Larry, then I'll let you ask a question because I'm probably talking too much. When I got the job at San Francisco State from Springfield College, even though San Francisco State was Division II in Far Western Conference and all that, I said, Harry, you're going to have to step your game up because there's coaches out there that run circles around you unless you're good. We didn't have conventions and all that like we do today. I got on a plane every October and spent 10 days with Tom Tellez. I'd call him and say, Tom, can I come down? He'd say, come down. I'd watch Tom Tellez coach all day, and he coached from 8 in the morning or 9 right through all the events. Then we go to dinner at night, and I'd sit down and say, why did you do this with Carl? What was the change you did here? Why did you do this with your discus thrower? He had a great discus thrower that won the NCAAs that year, 1 year. And that's how I learned. And I said, that's the way to learn. I'm learning from an expert, Tom Tellez.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm offering people through Do Go Athletics, gold medal motion.
Harry, thank you so very much. You survived 40 minutes with me. We could go another hour. We will put up on the site your website, and really appreciate getting the time today. Hey, sports fans, it's Larry Eder. We have been with Harry Marra on this Socialing the Distance. Harry has been coaching track and field at the high school, the elite, the club level for over 60 years. A great friend of the sport, a great friend of mine, and he has done something that has not been repeated in history yet. He has coached a Olympic decathlete gold medalist to defend 2012, 2016 with Theisen-Eaton. He took Ashton and Brianne and they won medals at the World Indoors. That had never been done before either. And I think he can take just about any athlete that I know and help them be better. And that's what his skill set is. And you guys can do that at his website, which we will have, dogoathletic.com, dogoathleticadvisors.com/Harry Marra. We will have that up on the site for you too. Harry, thank you so much. You did great today.
Thank you, Larry. Appreciate it. Good luck. Stay safe.
Hey, sports fans, it's Larry Eder with RunBlogRun. This is your favorite program, Socialing the Distance. And this week we featured somebody really special, Harry Marra. Harry's been a track coach for over 60 years. He's coached at the high school level, the college level, the elite level. He's done some things that no one else has ever done. He's coached the defending Olympic gold medal decathlete to his second Olympic gold medal, and that was Ashton-Eaton, 2012, defended in 2016. He also took Ashton and Brianne Theisen-Eaton, and they won medals indoors at a World Indoor Champs. That had never been done before either, the same coach coaching both. I met Harry in about 1982. He was coaching at SF State, had taken over a program a little earlier than that was in a pretty rough place. How rough? 1976, I went to run a steeplechase there, and as I was warming up on the barrier, it rotted through, and we had to cancel the steeple. So it gives you an idea of the level of disrepair. It was just a tough time, tough economic time. Harry brought that program. He came in from Massachusetts, and with a lot of enthusiasm, really built that program up. He brought in Johnny Mathis, who many of you know. Johnny is a fine singer, but in 1956, he desired to compete at the Olympic level in the high jump. He was quite a fine high jumper. He put money in over the years to allow the SF State team to travel, to build up their program. I remember competing there a half dozen years in the 10,000, and my training partner, Jim Gruber, would compete in the steeple or the 10. It was a lot of fun and always a great meet, and it's still going on in I think a different name. But Harry in about 2000 and has been coaching forever, and he's coached athletes at bottom levels, but I met him again in 1990 when he and Fred Samara developed the Visa Decathlon program with the support of John Bennett. John was then, I believe, the president or CEO at Visa and fell in love with the multi-events and fell in love with the Olympics. And it was through this program that we got Dan O'Brien, Dave Johnson, Chris Huffins, Brian Brophy, just a plethora of great athletes. And I got to meet Bruce Jenner, Bill Toomey, Bob Mathias, Milt Campbell, Rayford Johnson. They were all involved, and they advised the young decathletes about the history and about the tradition and about how to compete. Frank Sarnowski, who we call Zeke, the godfather of the decathlon, was involved. So these kids had amazing resources to build upon, and out of that we developed some strong medalists. And Harry and Fred were part of that. Then Vin Lanata reached out to Harry in about 2010, 2011, and asked him for a suggestion on a multi-event coach at Oregon. And then Vin finally said, hey, I want you up here and I want you here tomorrow. So Harry got in his Miata and drove from Santa Barbara, Tascadero actually, up to Oregon with the stuff in the car, and the rest was history. In 2011, in the spring, I spent some time with Harry and asked him what his job was, and he said, I'm trying to keep Ashton from getting hurt in 10 events. And then he started working with Brianna too. And in 2012, Ashton broke the world record at the Olympic trials, won the gold medal in London. 2013, Ashton took the gold in the decathlon at the world champs. 2014, he took a year off and competed world class in the 400 hurdles, an incredible event. 2015, he won in Beijing. 2016, he set the, or he won again in London, or not in Rio at the Olympics in a rather cold and damp environment. And then after that, he and Brianne called it quits. She medaled, and they, they developed a business and a family. Harry decided he wasn't going to coach actively anymore, but he's been working with Dogo Athletic Advisors, and you provide him a clip of a video of an athlete, and he works with Dogo with their technology and with his training, and they help make athletes better. They find your weak spots and they improve those. We're going to have Harry back and have him talk about things, but he's an incredible resource. He had some good things to say on this interview, so I encourage you to check it out and pass it out to your coaches. This is Larry Eder with RunBlogRun, and the epilogue for Socialing the Distance. We featured Harry Marra today. Harry is one of the finest coaches I know, finest humans I know. He's coached for 60 years. He worked with Ashton Eaton and Brianna Theisen-Eaton, among many other athletes, and just an overall great guy. And if you're a parent looking for your kid to improve, if you're a coach looking for your kid to improve, if you're a coach wanting to improve your skills, I encourage you to go to dogoathleticadvisors.com/Harry Marra and check it out. I know I would. This is Larry Eder signing off. If you like RunBlogRun, like us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you love us, subscribe on our YouTube. We have 369 videos and audios from 2020. We have over 2,500 videos and audios since 2010. There are some great resources there. We encourage you to pass them around. Again, Larry Eder signing off. Stay safe. If you're indoors, wear a mask. If you're outdoors and can't be 6 to 8 feet separated, wear a mask. We're making progress on this thing, but I want to see you guys at track meets and we can tell some stories. Okay? Talk to you soon.